everyone, Jules here. Today I'm going to do a bit of a talk about my spiritual practice, and this was requested by Pat at the Owl's Roost about a week ago when I did another video about spirituality, beliefs and tarot. And in that video I mentioned that I don't have any beliefs attached to my spiritual path, and Pat left a comment on the video saying that she would like to hear a bit more about some of my spiritual practices and some of my aspects of my spiritual path. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to talk about some aspects of my spiritual practice, and I'm going to show some cards from 3 oracle decks, because I'm going to talk about the different elements of my spiritual practice. So I'm going to use some cards from the Conscious Spirit Oracle deck and the Native Spirit Oracle, as well as the Sacred Earth Oracle. And I'm going to use these cards as prompts for the different aspects of my spiritual practice. So to begin with, I want to mention a little bit about journaling. I use a journal sometimes like this. It could be any journal that someone would want to use, and I record some of my tarot and oracle readings in here, and I also write notes about anything else that I find along the way as well, but this one is mainly for my oracle and tarot readings, my own readings for myself. And this one is just different notes and ideas that I get along the way, and it could be from a book I'm reading or just any insights that I get. Sometimes I will make a note of them when I can remember to. And then I'm going to mention tarot, and I'm going to show some cards from the Giant Rider Waite deck. And I'm going to talk about something that I have done a video about recently too, about having tarot ally cards for guidance. And just talking about tarot as well. Tarot, particularly the Major Arcana cards, for me, the Major Arcana cards of the tarot are pages of a spiritual book, because there are so many spiritual teachings for me in the Major Arcana. So that's how I see the Major Arcana of the tarot as part of my spiritual practice. And I mentioned in a video recently that I have 2 particular ally cards that have become important to me now, and that is the Hermit card, who I also see as Merlin, and I also see as Chiron. So the Hermit card is a particularly important ally card and guide for me. The other one at the moment, or for a long time I think to come, is the charioteer. And I call this the charioteer rather than the chariot, because the driver of the chariot for me is more important as far as being an ally card for me in my spiritual practice. And another intermediary ally card for me as well is the Hanged Man, which I see as the shaman, because for me that's representing initiation. So the Hanged Man card is becoming important as well. And in regard to tarot, if I can just talk a bit about how I also see tarot. I find that using the tarot and with my spiritual practice, my intuition is such that I just like to go with the flow. And this is why I'm showing the flowing river. I see intuition like a flowing river, and it does guide and inform my spiritual practice and my spiritual path. So that's another reason why tarot is very important for me. And it's also part of perception, and perception is really important for me in spiritual practice and on the spiritual path, and developing perception along the way so that it actually gets stronger and happens more often. And I also see tarot for self-development as well as spiritual development. So this card representing potential is important with tarot work as well. And what I also am doing here is I have divided all of these aspects of my spiritual practice into elements. So the element for intuition, I am using this for water. Now I'm going into the air element, which is Grandfather Sky. And for me, this is astrology. Astrology is part of my spiritual practice and is part of my spiritual path. So the sky, the heavens, the planets are all part of a spiritual approach for me. And it does represent the great mystery of the soul journey. And that is also, of course, to do with the major arcana cards of the tarot as well. So tarot and astrology are both spiritual practices for me. And I've included the shapeshifter card in this as well, because you can see the moon in this card, and the moon is particularly a shapeshifter. And I love the shapeshifter aspect about the movement of the planets and the changes that happen with astrology. And this last card here, it's called Integration. This card helps to show and represent astrology for me too, because it's like our connection here on Earth with the planets, and it's a way for me to connect my inner self with my higher self. And I also see this in a way with Kabbalah work too. For me, tarot and Kabbalah go together. I know for a lot of people that does not have to be the case, but for me it does. So Kabbalah practice also, for me, helps to connect my inner self with my higher self and the universe, universal energy. So that is all to do with the air element. I use the air element for that one because it is to do with the sky. And I suppose with the air element I would put all of my metaphysical books, because I use resources as an integral part of my spiritual practice as well. The next element is earth, and earth is the element that I am working more with. I find that the water and air elements are more automatic for me, and I've been doing that for a long time, but I'm going to be working more with the earth element. So I have Spirit of Earth here. And particularly nature spirits. I go on nature walks and I love walking out in nature. I actually live close to the city, but I'm lucky to have a beautiful large park that is nearby. So nature walks and connecting with the earth part of nature is really important for me now, and I think it's going to be for a long time. And nature spirits, I've always felt a connection to nature spirits, but I've needed to recover that because I had not really been thinking about that or working with that since childhood. So it's really beneficial for me now to be working with the earth element and nature spirits. And this is the earth elemental card. Here again, Grandmother Earth. And of course, with the earth element, there is ancestors and ancestry. So I'm also developing more of an interest in shamanism, and that is helping me to connect more with ancestral healing. So that's really important. And this card here that says productivity, this is something that I'm wanting to aim more towards as well. I feel that I would like to be more productive in my everyday life. And I really love this card because it not only represents nature, but I love the child in this card as well, because I suppose it reminds me of the nature connection that I did have as a child. So it's reconnecting that for me. And this last card, Alliance, which represents for me the connection to nature and the earth, and the alliance that you do have with ancestry and with ancestral culture. So I love this card. Now on to the fire element. This is the other element that I am going to be working a lot more, because earth and fire are the two elements that I need to work more with. So we have Spirit of Fire, this one's Answering the Call, which makes me think about shamanism again, but it also makes me think about the call that for me is connected to fire, which is inspiration. Feeling more inspired and reconnecting to that as well. That also reminds me of childhood. This card, the solar plexus, and chakra work for me represents not only body work, but the solar plexus in particular that I want to work with and have started to work more with. So chakras are quite important for my spiritual practice and spiritual path. I have done a chakra course in recent years and found it really beneficial. And the solar plexus chakra is particularly connected with the fire element. This card is Rediscovery. Now, I've mentioned childhood quite a bit, and inner child work is another aspect of my spiritual practice, particularly fairy tales. There's a lot of wisdom in fairy tales, and you can do a lot of work, inner work, with fairy tales. So inner child work is becoming more important for me as well. And I think the inner child work and inspiration too will probably start to lead into art work and art therapy, because creativity is quite important, and I was quite creative as a child, and I had left that aside for a long time. So I have bought a lot of art materials to encourage myself to do more artwork. And this card is called Heat, and for me it represents a kind of phoenix or firebird, which is to do with the fire element. And this alchemy card represents fire for me as well, and energy and healing. And this last card for the fire element is consistency, which for me is connected to the sun. Let's see the beautiful sun symbol here. The sun is always consistently there, providing warmth and life. And it also encourages me to be more consistent in some ways with my spiritual practice, not to get too sidetracked with other aspects, and to stay on track with my spiritual practice goals. And the last aspect to bring it all together is just tying everything in with putting all the elements together and what that represents for me on my spiritual path with my spiritual practice. So I'm starting with circle of life, and this is to do with cycles and life itself and the spiritual life, and also from a stage of life point of view. And the circle of life is connected to everything. And my spiritual practice and spiritual path has always been an important and a daily sort of approach to me, making it always part of my everyday life. The Elder card. Thinking about transitioning to the Elder and what that means for me and what that is going to mean. Having wisdom and a legacy to pass on that wisdom that I have found on my spiritual path through spiritual practice. Here is the transformation card. The transformation that's required with bringing all of the elements together in my spiritual practice and transitioning to the next stage of life. I love this card, Flames of Wisdom for the Crone. And I suppose that kind of summarises what I was just saying with the acquiring and accumulation of wisdom on the spiritual path. and continuing with that through to the next stage and beyond. This card is shifting into that transition. This card is formation. The formation of the next stage on my spiritual path. The formation of changes in my spiritual practice. Here is the Wheel of Life card, which summarizes all of the elements. And for me, the elements of life and also the elements of my spiritual practice and spiritual path. The last card I'm going to show is Center. And my spiritual practice and my spiritual path help me to be more centered. And I think, well, I know within myself that that will continue, because it has done so for such a long time, and my spiritual practice and spiritual path are really the main thing that does center me. So I hope that was a bit more informative about my spiritual practice and spiritual path. I have put together a playlist of some of the different aspects of my spiritual path. So if you would like to have a look at that on my channel, there's a playlist called My Spiritual Path. And I wanted to thank Pat at the Owl's Roost for requesting that, and I hope that she enjoyed some of those insights about my spiritual practice and spiritual path. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.